Hello peeps, what's up? Today I'm going to be talking about how to use some of the tools inside of Adobe Premiere Pro. Woo! Hey guys, what's up? My name is Steve Douglas, as you guys can see from this guy right here. But today I'm going to be talking about how to use some of the tools inside of Premiere Pro, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to import your footage as well, so you guys can start throwing things into the timeline, because in the last video I broke down how to set up your project for your importation of footage and whatnot. So let's jump into it. I apologize, my voice is a little raspy today, but hopefully you guys can still pull a lot of good information from this video. For the purposes of this video, I'm actually going to be using my current demo reel as just something to cut up, because I have a lot of clips in there. Nothing really goes together because they're all a bunch of separate projects, and so it'll give me a chance to kind of break some things and show you guys exactly what's what. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, one, I want you guys to not pay so much attention to the way my folder structure is set up here. I have it set up specifically for a demo reel, so it's not the same stuff I went over in the last video, but kind of follow along and use whatever I was telling you in the last video to import your footage and get things rolling. Whenever you first start pulling footage into your video, you'll want to go into that footage bin that we set up in the last video. You'll want to double click in the big empty space that opens up in the new bin, and you'll want to import your footage by selecting the footage where we set up in the video before that. And then once you've imported everything, you'll want to go into the sequences folder that I recommended you guys make in the last video. For our purposes, I'm just going to create a new sequence here. You guys can organize them as much as you'd like, but for this video, this is where I'm going to be placing things. So I'll create a new sequence, and as I said before, 1080p DSLR 24 is one of the most common formats. It's one of the best for YouTube exportation as well as Vimeo, and this is something that I use literally all the time. I'm going to name this Premiere Tools specifically so I can use the Premiere Tools in here to show you guys, and so I don't get it confused with the rest of my footage without breaking my project. So once you do that, you can go ahead and close your sequences folder. You probably won't need to go back into that unless you're bouncing between sequences. Also, if you notice here in the timeline, any sequences you have open, it automatically keeps those open and continues to. I'm going to leave both of those open because I am going to come back to working to those, but they'll stay there. Do recognize that that does eat a little bit of your RAM and a little bit of your CPU power away if you just let things sit there. So you don't want to open too many at one time, but you can if you have a decent enough system. So once we've done that, go to wherever your footage is located and you can start to dig things out. So I'm going to pull a couple of the narrative films that I've worked on. We'll pull Hands Up because this is one of my favorite pieces that I worked on. The first thing I want to do is whenever you load a clip into your source browser, you do that by double clicking the clip inside of the bin, or you can drag and drop it into the source window, whichever one you would prefer. There's a little timeline scrubber that you can use to scroll in between, the beginning, the middle, and the end of your clip. Using the I and O keys, you can select in and out points on your clip. Now what this will do is if I say, okay, this is the end point, I can then scroll down here a little bit, to wherever I deem it's a good cutting point. Let's say there. I'm cutting kind of randomly here, but you guys can be as precise as you would like to be. Then I can hit the O key, and as you can see here on the timeline, this is the in point, this is the out point. You can modify these by grabbing it once this little tool appears over that, clicking once it's there, and you can modify your in and out point by clicking and dragging as well. Once you've gotten to this point, you can do three things. In Premiere, you can set up shortcut keys to drop it immediately into your timeline. Whenever I use Avid, that's something that I use all the time. With Premiere, I actually do prefer to just drag and drop into my timeline simply because it just feels more natural. Inside Avid, it's more natural to use keystrokes, but I'll go over that in the next video on Thursday. So you can do one of three things, as I was saying. You can click anywhere in the footage window, drag it here, and you can see two clips appear. Now what happens is you'll want to drag it down to this first video layer and this first audio layer, and we're going to keep existing settings. It's just telling me that that particular footage was shot at a different frame rate and perhaps a different format. And so now you can see that I have two pieces of footage. Now, if you guys remember in the last video, this is representational of everything in my timeline. So if I start throwing a bunch of different clips down here, they will all appear in sequence in this window. This is just that source clip that I messed with before and that I selected my in and out points on just now. In Premiere, it automatically creates 3 video and 3 audio layers just anytime you begin a new sequence. It's just the way that it works. So as you can see, I can move that audio up and down as I was pleased. I can put it on any layer that I want to. Also, Command Z is one of your favorite things in the world whenever you're using editing, so just get really used to using Control or Command Z. As you can see, it will only play that clip. Okay, so as you guys can see, it's going to play that clip in and out. I know I'm being really basic. This is highly intended for people that have never cut before, and hopefully you guys are learning a little bit. Once you have some clips in here, I'm going to just arbitrarily grab a few more sections of this piece. So now I have 3 little clips. Whenever I was talking about I could do one of 3 things, if you just wanted a piece of video, you click on this little symbol here that looks like a little piece of a film reel or a film strip, and it will only drag the video. So if you notice, it's playing audio there because there's audio on the balance there. No audio in this particular clip. So you can drag video only. only. I'm actually not gonna mess with that too much in this clip. And you can do the exact same thing only with audio. You can grab this little waveform symbol and it will only drag the audio for that clip. That's great for if you're doing a documentary and you don't want to show everything that they're doing. Maybe it's a boring shot or you want to put some B-roll on top and you know you only want to pull the audio. That's the time you might want to use that. All the time for music videos, I'm only using this because maybe they shot using like some in-house audio amps or something just so the artist could lip sync, but I want the really clean, nice, refreshing studio audio for the music video. So I'll only grab the image. I'll just make sure to set my in point to wherever we on the crew decided that will be the sync point for the rest of the video. If that's in any way complicated, please leave a comment down below and I will help break it down. Have you ever wanted a service that makes it really easy to make a website, gives it the visual appeal of a professional style, and then also saves you 10%? Then visit the link down below and you guys can get 10% off of your first subscription plan using Weebly. Just make sure you use that link down below, and if they ask who referenced you, let them know that Steve sent you because it helps me out a lot, helps you guys out a lot. Let's all help each other save a little bit of money. I love you peeps, all that good stuff. Now back to the content. So once you have a few clips in the timeline, now this again is very arbitrary. Professional timelines will have dozens upon dozens upon dozens of clips, both audio, video, all kinds of stuff. But for simplicity, we'll just break down using these 3 clips here. The tools on your screen may be in a slightly different location. I have mine going vertical up and down. Some of you may have them horizontally. You can organize them in a bunch of different ways that really suits whatever workspace that you have. But you have a series of fairly basic, fairly universal tools that pretty much every editor will use at some point or another, fairly frequently for the most part. The number one is obviously like the easiest, and that is just your selector tool. You can select clips, you can highlight and select multiple clips, you can right click, give yourself a bunch of different options. That is the most basic tool, and it's the one that you can use to move things around as you wish. You can do pretty much anything with that tool except for the things that the other tools do. Next on our list is going to be your track select forward tool. Now these 2 tools actually do the exact same thing, just in opposite of each other. So the track select forward tool will bring up this series of arrows, and so if you click on a clip, it will select the clip that you're over as well as any clip down the timeline in the future. If I were to deselect and use the opposite tool, it will only select clips that are before, or clips that have already happened within the timeline. It won't select anything in the future. Now that's really useful for whenever you want, you cut a film and suddenly you decide, oh, I need to add this shot or I need to add this scene, and you don't want to like drag your window all the way out because this is what that looks like, and then you have to make sure that you don't accidentally select the wrong clips and you have to select everything to this side. So this just makes it really easy to go in and be like, okay, everything from this point forward I want to move and keep in sequence. So as long as your track is unlocked and not locked down, you will be able to move it, insert your clips, and then you can do a ripple delete to close the gap. And it's a really useful tool that a lot of people don't know about because they've just never been taught. So hopefully any of you experienced editors that just happen to be watching this, hopefully I just helped you out a little bit. But if not, that's okay. These videos aren't highly intended for you guys, but I still love you peeps. And then you can come down here to the ripple edit tool. This is a tool I don't use a whole lot inside of Premiere just because of the workflow that I'm used to editing. I use a similar tool in Avid all the time, but in Premiere I just don't use it very much. Now what this allows me to do, and this is something you need to be careful of because it can disturb the sync of your video, is I can grab the end or beginning of any clip. We'll take this one for example, and since I'm on this side, I can drag it in this direction and it will give me footage that happened before while moving everything else in a forward motion as to not disturb the sync of everything in the future. Problem is sometimes you may have to adjust sound, like for example it didn't drag this sound, so I now need to drag that back as well. But by doing that, it also threw off the sync of everything else. So it's just a tool that you have to be very careful with. It does have its uses. It's incredibly useful whenever you're doing really big projects. If you hold shift, you can actually select multiple tracks, and as you can see that keeps everything in sync. So just be very cautious whenever you're using this. It can disturb the sync of an entire timeline, and if you notice suddenly that your entire timeline, one track is off by X number of frames and every clip has that issue, chances are this is something that accidentally happened and you can fix it fairly easily by selecting that clip and doing the same motion. Likewise, if you come down and you select the rolling edit tool, it does the exact same thing, except this time it actually overwrites the footage that happened before or after it, and that makes it so that your sync is not disturbed. However, you are eliminating footage from the timeline by replacing it with other footage. So you'll want to be careful to not accidentally overwrite something that you didn't want to overwrite. Going next in our long line of tools is the rate stretch tool. Now this is something that I don't mess with too often because I prefer to use exact numbers, but it's something that you can adjust the speed of clips simply by dragging them, which is kind of cool. So I can grab a clip, I can pull it back as I just did, and now if you watch the clip, It's completely out of sync because I didn't do the audio, but now you notice that the visuals are working that much faster. Everything's just moving at a faster pace, which is kind of nifty if you want to suddenly speed something up or do time ramping. It's super useful. And likewise, you can do the exact same motion and slow things down by grabbing the clip and pulling it in the long direction. The razor tool is probably the most used tool next to your selector tool, and that is, it just allows you to start cutting things up in the timeline. As you can see, I'm taking the clips that I already had and I'm turning them into smaller clips that become modifiable. Now, this is something that a lot of pro editors will actually advise you against using, because most of your edits you want to take place within your source window so that you can place things purposely inside the timeline. Every editor at some point will use the add edit tool, or in this case the razor tool. They're called different things in different applications. To be able to just go in, cut things up, move things around, you'll be like, oh, I don't want this anymore, so you'll want to lift it out, but you want to be very precise. And it just feels good to take a blade and just get in and really start doing it by hand. It feels more natural sometimes. And so I encourage you guys to use it as much as you would like to, but try to make things as purposeful as you can in the beginning, because it'll save you time and make you more efficient in the long run anyway. The slip tool is similar to the ripple edit tool, except that it doesn't change any of the clips in your timeline. It simply takes a clip and changes the position of it on the timeline. So as you can see, everything's kind of in sync here. He's talking, things are happening. But this ripple edit tool, if I click this clip and I drag to the right, things are suddenly out of sync. Suddenly things aren't where they're supposed to be. And what has happened is I've taken the video and I've told it, oh, I want you to give me the video that happens after this, and I want you to pull it back here, but I don't want you to change where this clip is, and I also don't want you to change the timing of it. The only thing that's changing is what's inside the clip. And that's really useful if you imported a clip into a timeline and it's slightly not where you want it to be and you want to shift the whole clip one way or another. Or maybe you notice, oh, my music video clip is out of sync. I need to move all these clips back by just like a couple frames, but I don't want to adjust everything else, and I don't want to go through the whole process of re-importing into the timeline. You can use this tool to slightly adjust the sync as needed. There are lots of different uses for this tool, but again, just like the ripple edit tool and pretty much every tool, you'll want to be careful what you do, because you can accidentally lose sync, you can accidentally delete footage, you can accidentally do a lot of different things that you may not want to do, so be careful. The slide tool is very similar, except that the slide tool will actually allow you to move a clip and overwrite or underwrite other things. As you can see, this clip is kind of moving, and it's taking the clip that happened before and the clip that happened after, and it's shifting them around the edge of this clip instead. But it still doesn't change the overall timing of your entire timeline. So similar to the slip tool, the slide tool does similar things, but just be careful. Feel free to jump in and just start playing with stuff. That's the entire premise of this entire video series, is I want you guys to play. I'm setting up a solid foundation for you, but now we're getting into the section where it's like, okay, let's start to break things, because that's how most people learn the quickest. Some people learn through videos, some people like to just break things. I encourage you to break things. Go for it. And then these bottom three tools, I'm actually gonna skip past the pen tool really quick. I'll come back to that. The zoom tool just allows you to zoom into your timeline a bit more. You can use the slider, or you can grab the circles. So I don't actually use this tool as a tool very often. Generally, I'll just grab these. Your hand tool just allows you to slide up and down the timeline by clicking rather than using the pointer tool. Again, I just tend to use this guy right here, so I don't use these very often. The pen tool is super useful whenever you're doing keyframing for audio. And so what you can do is, if you take a little scroll wheel on your mouse here, go into the track down here in the lighter gray area, and if you scroll up or down, you can change the widths of those. And then by using the pen tool, you can create keyframes that will change, you know, the volume of the audio, how much of an effect you put on a piece of audio. You can do similar things with video. So you can do lots of different stuff with the pen tool, but this tool is a little more advanced, and I'll actually be doing an entire video in about a month. It breaks down how to use the pen tool more efficiently, and I'll talk about keyframing and things of that nature. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you could, make sure to check out our sale down on Spreadshirt. All the time we're giving out deals 15 to 25% off, and you guys can buy awesome shirts, and it shows some love. If you could, make sure to leave a like down below. Leave a comment. Let me know how I can improve so that I can help improve some of the tutorials that I'm bringing you peeps. Hit like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!